Yeah, and even Denver's having a chuckle at that too, because Donald Trump was trying to abuse the horrible SOTUS opinion that came out that provided him with presidential immunity by trying to distort it to create this brand new avenue of immunity called president-elect immunity. But Judge Merchan made quick and swift dispatch with this idea that Donald Trump has this version of president-elect immunity.
But we begin tonight with breaking news. Judge Juan Marchand making public his decision to uphold sentencing for Donald Trump's conviction back in May on 34 counts of falsifying business records in the New York hush money case, in which Trump paid off porn actress Stormy Daniels to keep the information about their alleged affair, which he continues to deny, out of the public eye before the 2016 election. The decision is yet another historic first for Trump. Judge Marchand has ordered Trump to appear for sentencing on January 10th, next Friday, just 10 days before Chief Justice John Roberts will swear him in as president. Once he's sentenced, Trump will officially be a convicted felon. Let that sink in for a minute. Not only will he be a convicted felon, but he will also be the first president in American history to be a convicted felon, something Trump has worked assiduously to avoid. This will join a litany of stains he cannot expunge from his legacy, no matter how many friendly courts stack things his way. From being the first president to be impeached twice, the first president to be accused of inciting an insurrection, and the first president to be found liable for sexual abuse and defamation by a jury of his peers. In his meticulous 18-page decision, Judge Marchand acknowledged that prison time would not be part of his sentence. He did, however, address, point by point, each of the Trump counsel's legal arguments as to why the case should, in their view, be dismissed. Key among them was the claim that as president-elect, Trump was afforded the same immunity as sitting presidents. Judge Juan Marchand writes, binding precedent does not provide that an individual upon becoming president can retroactively dismiss or vacate prior criminal acts, nor does it grant blanket presidential-elect immunity. He added, to dismiss the indictment and set aside the jury verdict would not serve the concerns set forth by the Supreme Court in its handful of cases addressing presidential immunity, nor would it serve the rule of law. On the contrary, such a decision would undermine the rule of law in immeasurable ways. He closed by ordering the future president to appear virtually for his sentence on January 10th, where he could face a fine or probation. Donald Trump's spokesperson vowed that Trump would fight this decision and all quote-unquote hoaxes until they are all dead. Joining me now is Katie Phang, trial attorney and host of the Katie Phang Show right here on MSNBC, and former Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman, who served as senior advisor to the January 6th Select Committee. Thank you both for being here. Katie, my friend, I want to go to one of the parts of this decision that I found the most fascinating, the most interesting. Judge Marchand, for a really fascinating decision, talk to us about this apparently made-up concept called presidential-elect immunity that the Trump team tried to put forward and how that got knocked down.
Yeah, and even Denver's having a chuckle at that too, because Donald Trump was trying to abuse the horrible SOTUS opinion that came out that provided him with presidential immunity by trying to distort it to create this brand new avenue of immunity called president-elect immunity. But Judge Merchan made quick and swift dispatch with this idea that Donald Trump has this version of president-elect immunity. And it also threads the needle very carefully, I think, for appellate purposes, Joy, because it makes it clear that the actions of a president when they are not sitting in the Oval Office does not afford him or her immunity. And that covers the bases for the conduct that was criminal in this instance. Remember, this was the falsification of business records, and this happened before Donald Trump went into the Oval Office. But Joy, even though this is a meticulous opinion, as you note, and I give Judge Merchan his flowers whenever they are due, I want to say I am angry. And if anybody's watching this right now is angry, you're allowed to be angry. But you're not angry at Judge Merchan. Be angry appropriately and lay the blame at the feet of Donald Trump, the Supreme Court of the United States, because the arc of justice has been crushed and flattened by the weight of the Oval Office, not because of the dignity or the integrity of that office, but because of the deceit by which Donald Trump made it back into that Oval Office. And this is why people angry by this outcome should say, there is no true justice anymore, because you and I both know that if this was someone else, Joy, this outcome would have been different. There would have been a sentence held in abeyance. There would have been something that had teeth to it, but this is also spitting in the face of jurors that sat for more than 7 weeks. The original grand jurors that returned an indictment, and then the jurors that sat for 7 weeks and took in this evidence and rendered a verdict of guilty.
So there's a lot there. But as you see, there's a lot of malevolent and visceral anger in this young woman's voice in relation to Trump. As we can see here, they would just love to throw Trump in prison for the rest of his life. And they would probably love to see Trump and his family go to prison for the rest of their lives as well. She makes this comment that if it had been anyone else, they would be serving jail time very easily. But nothing about that comment is even the utmost of actual intelligence. Because all in all, in honesty, if this wasn't Trump, no charges at all would even come from this from anybody who have been in that situation. Even the stark leftist progressive liberal YouTuber David Pakman, who pretty much hates the right and hates Donald Trump, even admitted that if this wasn't Donald Trump, probably none of these cases would have been brought up against anyone. So it's a lie and very irrational to say that if this was anyone else, they would be in jail or prison. If you're still here and you're liking this content, make sure you subscribe below.
Indeed. And, Denver, I want you to tell us why you're chuckling. We are always interested in your chuckles. We find them very entertaining. So you can please expound on that. But you know why, Riyadh? And I take everything Katie said. I go back to Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland, who the American people pay a quite substantial six-figure salary to do justice on our behalf. He sat on the Trump alleged crimes, when it came to a much bigger case, meaning the insurrection, in which the January 6th committee, for which you were an investigator, gave him point by point a roadmap toward a prosecution. The impeachment proceedings, also a roadmap toward a prosecution. He was impeached again for the insurrection. And yet Merrick Garland could not see his way to doing justice for the American people. He decided to put a go-between in the middle, Jack Smith, who actually did Merrick Garland's job for him, only to get thrown out in the case of the documents case, because that judge used the sort of trickery, right, handed to her by Clarence Thomas to say, oops, sorry, he's not legally applied. He can't be the one to do it. And he literally has accomplished absolutely nothing when it came to the January 6th case, leaving this as the only case left. Only the state of New York has even tried to hold Donald Trump accountable. And so we're down to Judge Marchand being the one and only hero here. I'll let you talk now.
No, I get in the first thing, and I'm sorry I chuckled, Katie, because I was wondering if you would represent me if I had former congressman immunity. That's why I laughed. I thought that might be something we could utilize in the future for me, because I get in trouble all the time, as you guys both know. And so here's where, if me and you were sitting around drinking a whiskey right now, and I love talking to both of you about this, I still can't get over the fact that January 6th wasn't a bigger deal for the voting public, especially for the popular vote when it came to the election. Because there's things that I never saw come out during the actual investigation. For instance, the 35 million lines of data and call records that we sent to the archives. I never saw that evidence used. And we had encrypted that data, so we don't think it was even really accessed. And I wonder, with the 5 million hard pages of call records we had and we processed, what happened to that? Because we saw the command and control architecture. The other thing, too, you talked about the impeachment, the second impeachment. I did, with, and people can look this up on the NCRI website, Network Contagion Research Institute. Liz called me on January 6th to the morning of January 7th and asked me to look at what type of groups were there that day. 3 days later, we had identified 7 white nationalist groups. The other thing that I think that's been layered underneath all this is we talk about what didn't happen over the last 4 years was looking at the command and control architecture, and I know that sounds like fancy. It's just who the bad guys were in the communication line and really leading the charge. But the second thing was the people that were actually involved in January 6th and the inordinate amount of law enforcement, former military, but also white nationalist groups that were there. And I think, to me, my fear going forward is that if we only have one judge standing up right now and everybody else folded, we weren't aggressive enough in going after the bad actors there. What do we do? What is, as a normal American, I am. I'm a normal guy, right? What do I do, right? If it, I don't have former congressman immunity, I can't do things that happen and get away with it. There might be 1,200 people in jail that might get pardoned also, but they had to pay a price. I guess if you're as just a rational person, you wonder maybe the law isn't equally applied across everybody. And I think that's the thing that bothers me to both of you is that I still can't wrap my arms around the fact that the facts and data identified weren't more of a factor in the election, but it just means that a majority of Americans just didn't care. And it's something that I think that's been the struggle for me in some respects.
There's a lot there. And the idea if that only one judge gives a damn about applying convictions or applying pressure to Trump, then my argument would either be that one judge is incredibly intelligent out of the other judges, or the other judges are the ones that have decent intelligence and the one judge is completely stupid. Listen, now, based upon the argument that they're given, they would probably argue that all of these other majority of these judges are just wrong and maybe even the stupid ones. And the only one judge that's making this point is the competent point. And this is the argument that Joy Reid is talking about. This, we need as individuals apply pressure to Trump. Well, what a very convenient argument, because there's a lot of double talk there that's going on, especially with the comments about justice not seeming fair. He says if this situation would have been a situation that was personal to him, he would not be able to get immunity like Trump is receiving for himself. Well, again, this is completely untrue because, in general, if it wasn't Trump, these charges wouldn't have been brought up at all. But what is seemingly a little bit true is that, yeah, Trump probably is treated a little bit better than somebody else who's in the exact situation as him. But nobody would be in the exact situation as him because they're not Trump. So this is the preeminent understanding that seems to be undoubtedly misunderstood and forgotten and somewhat ignored. And this is mostly just adds into the narrative that they just want to see Trump go to jail. They would feel completely better if Trump went to jail, and they are taking ideas and freestyling them to the point where it makes it seem more of a normal and natural thing about just locking him up. They really don't have any points, any good perspectives, or any decent ideologies into the reason why they just have these critical theory perspectives about Trump and everything he represents is bad. And we just need to, as a society, do away with him and everything that he represents. Listen, if doing what we're doing is so bad with our terrible ideas and bad discussions, Trump would have never became president, which absolutely happened in this last election. So listen, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe below. I'm Mr. Rembrandt. I have more videos like this coming up, and I will see you on the next video.